This is a Radical Rant podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Hot Tag Podcast. Adam aka askcsradical here with you guys. Got a lot to go through this week. We have multiple shows to go through. We have both All Elite Wrestling Dynamite episode number 2 and the aforementioned AEW Dark that played the night before. That was the dark matches we missed from the first episode. We are also going to actually take a dive into NWA Power, as the first Power Hour actually came out as well last Tuesday, and I got a lot to talk about on that front. So, the most important thing to go through is honestly just this weird feeling now after this specific week that we've had, where it almost feels like wrestling has had a bit of a revival here. AEW is now in full swing. AEW Dark has now given us some free content, so anybody can keep an eye on what's going on there, and that's a fantastic option. But now with the NWA Power Hour, there's something interesting else going on here. Whether or not you're into this style of wrestling that the Power Hour has shown, which we'll talk about shortly, the intrigue of having this sudden resurgence of wrestling, and at least here in America with names that people recognize, and I mean promotional names. You have WWE, you have now AEW as becoming the clear number 2, and now the NWA is back in some aspect, taking almost a retro look. So it's very interesting, and I'm quite excited from that. So NWA, for this time being, is going to be part of the show now. So every week, at this point on the Hot Tag Podcast, I will be covering the NWA Power Hour, AEW Dark, and of course AEW Dynamite. NXT is just not going to have time at this point. Now, if I can eventually shift something aside, maybe we do get to that point, but at this moment, it's just those two promotions right now. I do not have enough time with everything else that I do to justify another 2 hours of NXT, and especially not another 3 hours of Raw or SmackDown. So, we're going to move right into NWA Power. So, I was intrigued just from knowing that it was going to be a free show on YouTube to start. I saw a picture of the old set, which I was very interested in. You know, it just looked really cool to see a retro look back. And the idea of studio wrestling. So, I had it on my radar. And when the first episode came out, I decided that, you know what, I'm going to go after it, and we'll see what happens. So, the way that the show seems to be promoting itself is, again, it's a very retro show. It's having that 80s look. I mean, the intro to this Power Hour is Dawson. So, you know, it's getting pretty 80s right here. It's very clear as well that they are trying to make it very much like these kind of studio shows you would see on a weekend. With your Ric Flairs, the Blackjacks, like all those guys. And they make it pretty obvious, too, because they always call the people that are wrestling in this company men. It's not boys, it's men. So they're usually talking about grizzled veterans that have been in the business for a while, and based on the kind of guys you see there, it seems like they were trying to push that look. Now, the show itself was... It's going to take some time getting used to, that's for sure. The audio alone, there's no music, so you're not getting entrance music. The commentary was a little bit difficult to hear at times. Jim Cornette, and I can't think of what the other guy's name is right off the top of my head. I think it's Joel something, Joe or Joel. And it was difficult to hear them at certain times because with it being a studio show, any mics catching background sound, whether it's the ring mics, whether it's the crowd mics, anything overrides the commentary. So there is a bit of a weird thing they got to work out here. But all in all, I think the weirdest part is just going to have to get used to the audio, because studio wrestling leads that every cheer, every clap, it sounds so much bigger than it is. Because you're so used to an arena, so the echo isn't there. The more like muffled sounds aren't there because it's literally right in your face. There's not a lot of room between the ring and the crowd, so... But all in all, like, overall, if I'm really going to take a look at this show, I mean, to be completely honest, it was fine at best. Like, there was nothing that I would go out of my way to tell you guys to watch. But what I will say is that this show is definitely designed for a specific audience that probably grew up with the old Power Hour, and if that's what they're going for, then they probably please that audience pretty well. For me, it's it's iffy, but it's enough there that, and it is also an hour. So I'm still at that point of wanting to take a good look at it. It's just for this time being, I'm prefacing me saying that I'm going to start covering the Power Hour by saying, look, this show is definitely not designed for me, at least after one episode of watching. So I'm going to assume that there is a very significant chance that I don't continue with the show moving forward as we get, weeks and weeks in. Because quite honestly, like from what I saw in this show up until the main event, there is a whole lot of nothing. Now, if we're talking the promos, that's a different story. The one thing that this show does phenomenally well is its promos, which I'll get to right off the bat here. So, to open up the show, they bring out the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, Nick Aldous, that being the former Magnus from TNA. It continues to weird me out that the guy friggin' looks like Hugh Jackman. It scares the crap out of me. It's weird. The interview was really good. He definitely has the promo. He's got that Ric Flair sort of like professional promo in him. That was pretty good. The only thing, again, is with the studio audience, it's hard to tell if it's just the fact that the mics are just that intensely loud all the time, or the way that the cheers were going on, I really felt like at certain points, like there was somebody outside in the crowd, like just directing them, hey, cheer for this. So it was a little bit weird. I don't know if maybe the crowd was a little antsy or if somebody was directing them a little bit, but there were moments in the interview that I'm like, there's nothing to cheer for, guys. Like, just let the guy talk, all right? Let's kind of calm down here. But the promo itself was fine. It was okay. It was okay. The first match we get on the card is the Dawsons defeating Sal Rinauro and Billy Buck. It was basically like a very, very old school squash match. Like the team of Rinauro and Buck got basically zero offense. The Dawson's looking like, your old like Southern Hoss tag team, just a bunch of big guys. The post-match interview was just, them being bullies and the same kind of stuff you would expect. It really did feel like a very old 80s show, and that seems to be what they're going for. But nothing really to speak of here with that match. There was a random, and I don't know what the hell was going on here, but it was like this weird Austin Idol wrestling school commercial, and I wasn't sure if it was a real thing or like a vignette. Because it was so like cheesy 80s that I'm wondering if it was intentional or if it's, supposed to be like a parody. Like he's going to end up being a manager or something like that. I mean, it seems like it must be a real school, but regardless, it's like the promo was so weird to me. And I guess if they're going with the retro look, I suppose it makes sense. But for a first-time viewer, I'm like, is this supposed to be a joke? Like, I don't know what's going on here. We had another interview. We had Eli Drake, another very good interview. And he ended up taking on Caleb Conley. Eli Drake does win with the gravy train. And that match was fine. That was probably... Well, I mean, there's only really two matches to speak of on the show, and this is one of them. It was decent. Again, it was short. The offense wasn't too over the top. It definitely seems like they're going for that old school look, so there's not going to be too much high-flying stuff. Conley did get a little bit of high-flying stuff in there, but it wasn't much. But in the end, it was, this is probably one of the more even matches you'll probably see with the way the show's going. So, but it was fine. It was nothing to go out of your way of seeing, but I mean, it's still like it's a quick 5 to 10 minute match. It's just something nice to kind of digest. It's not going to demand too much out of you. The next little bit, though, was very difficult to digest. So this random guy comes out, and he starts yelling for Storm. And we're assuming that means he wants Tim Storm, which is the guy who's going to be challenging Nick Aldis at the end of this show for the NWA Championship. And this guy called Josephus comes out and yells for him, and this guy looks like I don't know how to explain. He looks like a fucking old baby. Like that. It's kind of the way he looks. He's got the fat tubby like the stomach going on there. He's just got plain old black trunks. He's got this like weird like shitty looking goatee and beard like and mustache and all that shit. He looked like the classic like 80s dirtbag heel. And it was annoying for quite a while. I'm just sitting there being like, okay, can we get this fucking thing over with? And then James Storm, who is apparently the national champion, which I was completely forgot that was a belt. He comes out to intercept saying, here, how about you take on this Storm? They brawl. It was kind of shit. It didn't really do much at all. Yeah, I don't know what it really added here. And by the end of the show, like, my opinion of Josephus is not going to be very high as we get later down the card. So the next match we get to is the wild cards, that being Royce Isaacs and Tom Latimer, going up against Danny White and Mims, which is a really stupid name. The wild cards are the reigning NWA Tag Team Champions. Apparently, they beated Villain Inc. or Villain Enterprises to get that title. This was another mostly squash match. I mean, I think White and Mims got a tiny bit of offense compared to what Renoro and Buck got against the Dawsons, but for the most part, it was still very much a squash match. I really don't understand why Isaacs has these weird trunks that he has, where it's like trunks with the Young Bucks flair, like the tassels or whatever you want to call them, like what they have on their boots. It was very strange. I don't like the look at it at all. It really looks kind of dumb. And also together, the two of them look like they make no sense as a tag team, because it looks like Latimer is this like punk rock like metal thing, almost like to what Tyler Rex kind of look had in WWE way back when. And then you got Isaacs here trying to look like somewhat classy up top, and then like a young buck, with his attire. I don't know. It's a very strange combination here. They win pretty handily again with a pop-up powerbomb to a dragon suplex to win. So the wild cards obviously just showing themselves off here. They get a post-match promo. Isaacs has a pretty good voice. I'll give him that. So while his look is kind of dumb, he does have a pretty good gift of gab going on. But then speaking of the gift of gab, Eddie Kingston interrupts, and I am a massive Eddie Kingston fan. Going all the way back to Chikara where I first saw him. I love this guy. And apparently he's in a tag team with Homicide, so Eddie, takes a few jabs at the guy on the mic, and basically just it puts it over that these are probably going to be their first opponents for the tag team titles. Seems pretty obvious. During their little squall, all of a sudden Storm and Josephus come back out and they start brawling, but then Josephus just runs away and they do a really slow chase around the studio. It looked really stupid, like not even fun stupid. It looked cheesy and campy as shit. I didn't appreciate that, but they decided to do a match. So Josephus tries to do the whole, I won't get into the ring unless you have your hands behind your back and whatever else. So he finally does. Josephus comes into the ring, and as soon as the bell rings, he tries to charge Storm, and then Storm just hit him with the last call kick, and that's it. So all that for a squash, like a really quick squash. That was kind of pointless. So that was a little tough. So we get to the end of the show, which is obviously the NWA World Heavyweight Championship match between Nick Aldis and Tim Storm. You get a bit of a promo on Storm being obviously this 53-year-old guy who's a teacher. He used to hold the belt. This is pretty much his last shot at it. In fact, if he lost this match, he would no longer be able to challenge for the belt. So it's probably like his last hurrah almost in a way, unless they do something interesting with it, which they could based on how this match went. The match itself was good. I thought it was a pretty good old school match. A few things kind of happened to mess things around a little bit. At one point, Storm, who was supposed to be getting over as the big babyface here, he hits a low blow on Aldous while the ref was distracted for a moment, and he gets the perfect Storm, which is his tilt-a-whirl slam, and we figured that was the end, and Aldous manages to get a near fall on that. At one point, Aldous goes to clothesline Storm outside the ring, and he hits his valet Camille, and that looks like it's setting up again another chance for Storm to win. Several times Aldous tried to put him away with the cloverleaf, and that didn't work. But after hitting Camille, Storm tries to do everything he can. It looks like it's perfectly set up for something bad to happen for Aldous, and then just out of nowhere, Aldous gets a roll-up with a small package, and that's it. That's the match. The match itself, like I said, was very good, but the finish just sucked. It sucked all the air out of it that a small package... Essentially, if Tim Storm can no longer ever challenge for the belt, a small package is kind of a really bad way of going. Like, you really thought he was going to go down with a cloverleaf because, you just put him through so much pain that eventually he just has to give up, literally and figuratively, on his chances for the NWA title ever again. And my thing is, too, is like, if you're going to have Storm, like I said, lose his last chance, you would want that finish to be a lot more, like, final. Like, a roll-up seems like you could always go back and do it again. So it was just kind of a weird way to go. And the show would end with getting a post-interview with Aldous. He was thanking Storm, giving him a little respect, but he also healed up a little bit by Anytime the announcer would try to ask Camille about the clothesline that she took from Aldous, Aldous would keep like saying she doesn't have to say anything and whatever else. So he was kind of playing the douchebag heel at the end. But all in all, the show was, like I said, it's okay at best. Like for a first look, for a first impression, it was not that great. I'm curious enough just because it is an hour, so it is possible for this show to at least be really easy to go through. It's for the same reason that AEW Dark is a fantastic show, which we'll get into in a moment. But if this was its first impression, I wish they had at least tried a little bit more. If they really are going 100% on the retro Saturday, like NWA Power Hour kind of thing to it, cool, but if you're going to do your first show, maybe at least not have half your show being squash matches. That's all I got to say about that. So we go to AEW Dark. So this will be, at least for now, I don't know what other channels it's on, but I just watch it on their YouTube channel. It is all the Dark matches that they tape after, I believe, AEW Dynamite. So it's usually anywhere between, by the looks of it, it's going to be between 3 and 4 matches, depending on how long they go. That seems to be where they're leaning. So without going into the matches first, just the same problems that I had with Dynamite. The auxiliary feed for music was just not there. So again, not being able to hear a lot of the music just didn't come over well with me, because I love a lot of the tracks that they have with these guys. I want to hear them. I don't want to be wasting time just hearing clapping and whatever else. I want to be able to hear the music. That's just all. The other thing is that on this specific show, they definitely did the WWE problem of using the crowd shots a little too much. So they were using them at very big action points. I wish they would lean off on those too, because you should be doing them for near falls, not just other random moments. That's about it. So the first match we led off on this card was Darby Allin against Shima. This was a very nice start to the show. Shima started off right off the bell with attacking Darby as soon as the bell rang. Darby was taking everything in, kind of doing his thing where he just kind of looks around him, getting the crowd reactions. Shima just goes at him right away. It was a decent match between the two of them. Darby, I'm really big over, and as we get into the episode of Dynamite following that, it just continues on further why I'm falling in love with this guy completely. It was interesting to see the face of Darby targeting Shima's knees at one point. It was kind of strange, like a very very interesting offense, because he had him in like the Tree of Woe or something, and he just started like headbutting his knees. It was a very interesting way of offense, and in fact, it was strange to see Darby actually being the one that was targeting limbs when Shima looked like he was kind of playing the heel in this match. But he ended up wins with a coffin drop. He did do a coffin drop onto Shima's knees, which didn't look like fun to take, but the coffin drop itself doesn't look that fun to take regardless. But he does hit the coffin drop properly, which is a fantastic looking move when it hits. My God, it looks so gorgeous the way that he pulls it off. And Darby Allin does pick up the win. Like I said, good match. Following that was an 8-man tag, which was the Lucha Brothers, Pentagon, and Phoenix Lucha Brothers, Pentagon, and Phoenix with Angelico and Jack Evans taking on Private Party, that being Isaiah Cassidy and Mark Quinn, along with the best friends of Chuck Taylor and Trent. And this match, on the other hand, when the opening match was really good, this match was an absolute mess. The crowd was clearly having trouble staying with it. So were the cameras. They were missing a lot of stuff. It seems like they were trying to fit in a lot, and at the same time, they weren't really pacing it very well either. There was a lot of mistakes, a lot of stuff that was just getting lost in the shuffle. And with an 8-man tag, I mean, it just looked obvious too that it was a mess. And I've seen a lot of New Japan 8-man tags, and you can do a better job with it. I think they tried to be too fast with these, because 8-man tags, you got to slow it down just a little bit. I know it's something these kind of guys don't want to hear, the word slow it down, but in this case, you kind of need to, because if the cameras aren't keeping up with you, the crowd isn't going to either. So there was just a little too much going on. I do like that Isaiah Cassidy is now taking Chuck Taylor's old gimmick from like Chikara and stuff, where he'd have the high-pitched screams whenever anything was happening to him. I kind of like that somebody's taking that over. I hope the fans can take to that. Orange Cassidy had a minor thing in this match, of course, being a part of the Best Friends. He, at one point, blocks off, I believe it was Trent from, I think it was the Lucha Brothers, so he just had his hands in his pockets, standing guard, and then they just punched him. I think it actually, now that I think about it, was Angelico and Evans, and they just kicked him or something. But later on in the match, while the ref is busy with other stuff, Cassidy gets on the top turnbuckle, dives to the outside with his hands in his pockets, doing sort of like almost like a trust fall looking thing there. He does it on top of the heels, or I guess in this case, just the opposition at this point. The finish was the stomp package pile driver, but before that, so I think it was Chuck Taylor. Yeah, Chuck Taylor was leaning on the ropes, and Phoenix goes onto the turnbuckle, and he starts to walk across the ropes. Now I'm thinking, okay, he's going to do like maybe a dive on the guy, or he's going to turn it into a hurricanrana. No, while he's running on the ropes, he goes for a kick. So he tries to kick Taylor, and it blatantly missed. Like, he didn't even smack his leg, so there was no impact sound. Look, if you could have a high success rate on that, that's a cool fucking move to do. But that is such a low potential success rate. Jesus. Why would you try a move like that? It's too risky, because you could fall, you could completely miss, and it looks like nothing happened, and it just looks terrible, and that's what it did in this match. But they hit that kick, and then Pentagon holds up Taylor for the stomp package pile driver, and they win the match. Like I said, just an absolute fucking mess. This one was not very good. And then speaking of another mess match that was not very good, we have a tag team women's match with Britt Baker and Allie going up against Bea Priestley and Penelope Ford. The crowd was very dead by this point, and obviously this being later in the night after Dynamite, I'm not surprised by that. But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm sure with what the AEW Dark is going to be coming next Tuesday with Kenny Omega facing Joey Janela in a hardcore match, there is definitely going to be a live crowd in that main event. But either way, like, they should be able to at least get the crowd somewhat interested, and this match just didn't do anything. This was quite possibly the worst match they've had since starting, although the Leva Bates Alley match is up there as well. And yeah, this was really showing that they really did not have enough really good women to choose from, because some of them just are not ready for this yet. So far, after seeing Allie the couple of times I've seen her, I have not enjoyed her at all. I think she still needs some work. Penelope Ford seems very green. That also was not going very well. Any of her offense looked more like it was flash than impact. Most of her moves were like, again, the handspring elbow where you do like the backflip into the corner. It doesn't look that threatening, because half the time they're so busy trying not to fall that they're not putting a lot of speed with it. There was another big botch in the match from Brit. She looked like she was trying to do a pump handle slam with Penelope Ford. I'm not sure if she just didn't get her up, or her grip slipped, or Ford, quite frankly, just slipped on her feet and they just kind of fell over. It didn't look good at all. Eventually, Baker does get the win. She puts Ford in sort of a submissional. It's kind of like a crossface, and I guess because she's the dentist, she just kind of grabs like the jaw, like almost like she grabs like the inside of their mouth and just pulls down on the jaw, like they're trying to say she's wrenching it. So that's a bit of a weird submission hold. I don't know if I would ever like the idea, if I'm a wrestler, of having another person's hands in their mouth, given what the apron is like, giving the ropes, all that stuff. I'm not sure how I feel about that. But then again, the mandible claw was over for a long time. So, but yeah, this match was terrible. Like, man, those two matches back to back, like, at least, when you have guys like the Lucha Brothers, Angelico, Jack Evans, Private Party, Best Friends, like, there's a couple of spots you like. This match, quite frankly, just didn't have anything that really got my attention. It was just not that great. It seemed like everybody was just lost in this match. But the main event, SCU going up against the Jurassic Express. Again, Jurassic Express is continuing to get way more over. Luchasaurus is a fucking star at this point. Marco Stunt actually impressed quite a bit in this match as well. Nothing really out of the ordinary in this match. I mean, we've already seen these guys face off before, so we kind of had an idea of what we were getting. But other than that, I mean, between Stunt getting a lot better, at least, having a real good showing in this match, still ended the same way. The only difference is the best Meltzer ever was not the finishing move on Stunt. It was an elevated backstabber. And Kazarian picks up the pinfall on Marco Stunt. So all in all, AEW Dark, if this is a free show every week, if this is the quality, that's pretty good. And we'll see, obviously, next week how that goes. especially with a main event like Kenny Omega and Joey Janela in a hardcore match. That'll be very interesting to see where that goes. But all in all, it's very clear that, they've definitely got some good matches on this card. And if you're trying to get viewership for Dynamite, doing this the night before is a fantastic way of doing so, because the YouTube crowd will definitely look at this and they're going to see somebody that they like. So very, very pleased with the fact that we get an extra hour for free every week. I love that, and it's easily accessible for somebody here who doesn't have cable, so I'll take it anytime that I can. So let's finally finish off with AEW Dynamite, this being their second episode. Now, ratings-wise, as we've now known, they dropped quite a bit. They went from 1.4 to basically 1.1. All in all, you have to understand, though, that there were two series-ending games in baseball that night, not to mention a Dodgers game that was getting really intense near the end, so there were some eyes in different places on this card. But regardless, 1.1... after seeing a little bit of drop off, you're probably getting some of the fans that just tried to see what the big deal was, and then they left. And then you had guys leaving for baseball, and you still pulled a 1.1 on your second show. That's a very good sign. It means there's a pretty good chance they have 1 million fans consistent right now. And based on how this show went, I can see 1 million sticking around for next week, because quite frankly, this show was unfucking believable. Aside from just a single match on this card that was okay, that was good at best, this show was fan-fucking-tastic. So let's lead off with what, quite frankly, might be the best match they have had on television for sure, and certainly maybe a top 3 match right now in AEW, and that being the first round, or the first match in the quarterfinals of the AEW Tag Team Championship Tournament, a Private Party against the Young Bucks. This was an absolutely fantastic match. The crowd was not ever out of this match. Everybody was on their feet. Mark Quinn is a fucking star in the making. The fans were way behind this guy, especially when he got a hot tag. He runs in, he does a press to get into the ring. Then he runs out, does a suicide dive to one Young Buck. Then he goes over the top with a press for another, runs back in, does a rolling senton out of the ring, and then he goes back in one more time and does a moonsault, a standing moonsault from the ring to the outside. The fans were loving this. They did a great job by using Isaiah Cassidy's back to get the fans to think a submission finish was coming. They did a very long sharpshooter with that, and just to no avail, so Cassidy hung in there. Another great near fall where Quinn got that shooting star press that just looks so fucking gorgeous. And again, very, very close near fall with that. So by the end of it, the Bucks finally get a good chance to put them away. They get the Meltzer driver up and ready, but Cassidy pulls, I think it was Nick off the apron, and then Quinn just rolls up Matt for the surprise victory. So Private Party is going to the next round. I'm actually not surprised by this, because with the way that the Bucks are working against the Jericho stable, it probably makes sense they'll be busy with Santana Ortiz. And getting them out of the tournament early kind of takes away the favoritism angle, so you know that at the very least, the Bucks, most of the guys apart from Cody at this point have done a very good job at not pushing themselves too high. Cody has been getting a bit early, but there's only so many guys on the main event card, and they're already busy with Omega having this weird potential heel story that he changes into later down the line. But somebody's got to take the mantle, up against Jericho at Full Gear. Kind of makes sense that Cody would be that guy, but we'll see how it goes from there. But yeah, this was a fantastic match. If this is tag team wrestling at its best in AEW, man, WWE is going to have a hard time topping this, no matter what show they're using. So after that, we get the Jericho stable all coming out together. And again, unbelievable promo. Jericho comes out. They call themselves now the Inner Circle, which is such a rock band thing to do. So Jericho is clearly finding his character now being the rock star. So he's calling his guys his confidants. He's Le Champion. Obviously he's basically playing the thing. It's like it's an entourage almost. But he sells these guys great. Every time he introduces one of them, he says they're on my list, so a good nod to something else that he got over back in WWE. He he sells them all really well. Like he does. If you remember when Tama Tonga introduced, oh my god, Taiji Ishimori, just like telling everybody, look at him, and just pointing to his chest. Jericho does the same thing with Sammy Guevara, saying he's a Spanish god. Look how sexy he is. He goes to Santana and Ortiz, calls them, pit bulls among pit bulls, that they're crazy and violent and lethal. Then he gets to Jake Hager. And he's starting to sell the guy, being one of the most badass guys in the business right now because he's also in MMA. Fans try to kind of take things over a little bit. He chants, and they start chanting "We the People" at Hager. Jericho immediately says, "Hey, that chant or that gimmick sucked. It's dead and buried. It was bad creative, and now it's gone." And it shuts the fans up real quick. They immediately start chanting AEW, and Jericho just fucking owned them and had them in the palm of his hand during this entire promo. Like I said, they're now called the Inner Circle. I love how there's not really heels and faces right now in AEW. Like, these guys are supposed to be like the big heel faction, but the fans were blowing up at this. Lots of cheers. And then, of course, Jericho said after he defeats Cody at Full Gear November 9th, he's going to celebrate with a little bit of the bubbly. And everybody popped, as you would expect, because that is his new thing that he's getting over like a motherfucker, as Jericho does. This promo reminds me of the Attitude Era at its best. It really brought me back to the time where promos were as amazing as they were. It's like going back to CM Punk's pipe bomb. Like, you're just waiting on bated breath to every word. And he did such a fantastic job on selling his 4 members. He sold Full Gear, and he does at least sell the title match that he will have next week at the end of the night, which we'll get to. But speaking of that title match, we had our number 1 contenders match with Darby Allin up against Jimmy Havoc. Fucking love both of these guys. I actually like that they did the old school like window promo as a guy is entering, so they cut away a little bit and they show him speaking beforehand. And that was Havoc doing, at least introducing himself a little bit as this kind of psychotic guy. He wants people to feel his pain. Or I think that might be Darby now that I think about it. Regardless, it's the kind of stuff that you kind of want early on in these shows, because you want people to be able to understand who these people are, and especially somebody like Jimmy Havoc, who is predominantly a UK wrestler. A lot of people may not know who he is, so you need those kind of promos to really get the guy over. Darby, the same deal. They sold him a little bit by showing his 20-minute draw with Cody as he was entering the ring. So they do a very good job of at least getting you familiar with both guys. So the match starts on. Everything is very, very heavy. A lot of strikes, a lot of impactful moves. Havoc suplexed Allin he grabbed him from the inside of the ring completely. It would look like he would have done a Falcon Arrow, but obviously landing on your butt outside the ring like that is not a healthy bump. So he had him in the Falcon Arrow position when he landed. But so for Darby, he took a hell of a bump. He also used a Tiger Driver 98, which is a double underhook pile driver, which looked really good. That looked fantastic. If you're protecting it right, it looks amazing. There was a lot of biting in this match. Havoc was going for the fingers real quick. At one point, Havoc is prepared to take Allin back into the ring from the apron. Allin gets him back with some bites, so gets a little bit of revenge there. And by the end of the match, Darby Allin with the coffin drop, and he picks up the 1-2-3. So next week, Darby Allin will be facing Chris Jericho for the AEW Championship. Now, I saw people complaining that, because Jericho's talking a lot about his match against Cody at Full Gear, that it's clearly giving away that Darby Allin will not be winning that match. And yeah, it's obvious that Darby's not going to win that match, but that's kind of the point. The defense doesn't need to happen. I know that they want the titles to be defended often, but in this specific case, let's be honest here. Jericho didn't need to defend it, and all this match serves is to get Allin further over, because this guy, if he can stay healthy, because you look at the way this guy bumps, man, it's like Will Ospreay. He's at such a risk to just his career to end at any moment with any just move that's just not taken properly. But if this guy can stay healthy, this could be a real good fucking tweener character. Like, this could be like the new Jeff Hardy for AEW. And that is a fantastic pickup if they can pull that off. Because if anybody remembers Jeff Hardy's rise, it just kept climbing and climbing, and when he won, it was a big deal. So you never know. Maybe a couple years down the road when, Jericho starts to back off a little bit. Maybe Cody, Omega, Moxley, they've all had their runs here and there, and you're looking for a surprise one. Maybe Allen's a really good pick for it. Who knows? But I mean, to have guys like him potentially up there with MGF and Guevara and Adam Page and Spears if he wants to stick around, like all these guys they have that are coming up and have a chance to make title runs that they wouldn't have in other promotions. This could be a great opportunity for a lot of these guys, and Allen is definitely going to be one of them. So that match will definitely be fun to watch next week. Next up, we get a women's tag match. This one was a lot better than the one on AEW Dark. This was Rijo and Britt Baker taking on Priestley and Emmy Sakura. I know that they were playing the heel side, but Emmy Sakura's Freddie Mercury gimmick kind of doesn't work on the heel side. The fans weren't really taking to it at the beginning because she was doing her AOs while she was setting up a surfboard stretch for, I think it was Rijo. She did eventually, though, have a cool moment. She did this spear to Baker in the corner, but she was on the apron, so she dove from the apron back into the ring, into the turnbuckle. That was kind of a cool angle. I looked at that and meant, man, that could be really easy to screw up, but it looked fantastic. Not much to speak of really in this match. It was just a lot better than the previous women's tag that I talked about on Dark. Britt Baker again wins with that same submission she put on Penelope Ford. This time Emmy Sakura taking the submission finish. We're now knowing that Rijo is going to be facing Britt Baker for the women's title on next week as well. So you're going to have 2 title matches next week. I imagine that both of them are going to end in wins for the champions. I would really hope so. I wouldn't want any champion to not retain their first defense after becoming the first champion. But yeah, this match was okay. This was definitely the worst match on the card, but this was not a terrible match, not unlike some of the matches on Dark. Second match before the end of the show, we have Jon Moxley up against Shawn Spears. Another very good match. A couple of points that I have to be annoyed by. They had Pac on commentary. Pac didn't really start to do anything other than twice during the entire match just bitching that he wasn't in the title match, that he didn't get a chance to be the number 1 contender even though he's 2-0, which he has the right to be, but you could have done this in a quick promo rather than having him on commentary. I think they could have fit that in for like a 2-minute promo. That's all I can say about that. Another thing that I really didn't appreciate is Shawn Spears shaved his beard, and it doesn't look very good. The mohawk with the clean-shaven Spears does not look great. So, yeah, I guess Peyton might have told him to shave it off. I don't know, but regardless, man, that's not a good look for him. I wish he just kept that beard because he looked fucking sick with it. But aside from that, the match was really good. There was a couple spots to note of. Spears hit, I want to say it was a Death Valley driver into the guardrail. Moxley landed in the trio rope woe position. That looked fun to take. At one point, Spears hits the old tiebreaker. I don't know what he calls it now, but he got a near fall out of that. Eventually, Moxley does take him down with the paradigm shift, that being the Dirty Deeds, or in New Japan, the Death Rider, since they have the trademark there, so it is now called the paradigm shift in AEW. Omega comes out after the match. He has 2 weapons with him. He has a barbed wire wrapped bat and he has a barbed wire wrapped broom. He tosses the bat down the ramp to Jon Moxley, who's waiting for him, and as they're preparing to have a lightsaber duel with a bat and a broom, Pac leaves the booth and attacks Omega with a chair. It looked like a potentially bad bump if that was done wrong, because he does the top of the chair, like the edge, right to the top of, or the back of Omega's head. It looked brutal. It was very well done. There was a moment where it looked like for a second Moxley would have taken advantage, but he just tosses the bat down. He's like, no, it's not worth it. I want to take him head on. Some people are saying, is Pac and Moxley possibly working together? I don't think that's the case. I think Moxley is going to be almost like your chaotic neutral guy in AEW. So I don't see anything. I don't think they're going to try to form another stable too soon, especially with you're already going to have the Elite and the Inner Circle going at each other, so I don't see them taking that route. So our main event, Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara going up against Adam Page and Dustin Rhodes. My God, Dustin Rhodes looks fantastic for 50, doesn't he? He was amazing in the ring. Another notable was that it seemed like because he's a member of the Inner Circle now, the panda gimmick that Sammy Guevara has is not there. He didn't come out with that headdress that he usually has. So it looks like maybe he's not going to have that, unless maybe he's on his own in a singles match, he might still have it, but it seems like anytime he's coming out as a team, he's just wearing a leather jacket with the Inner Circle shirt like the rest of them. The beginning of the match, it was supposed to be Guevara and Rhodes starting off. Rhodes demands that he gets Jericho first because obviously he wants vengeance for what happened last week. Jericho says, all right. He tags himself in, and then as soon as anything starts, he just tags Guevara back in. But, I mean, it's the usual fake out. But Rhodes is having none of it. Immediately just runs at him and beats the shit out of him. He takes him right outside the ring. Almost like a hockey level fight, because Jericho was still wearing his Inner Circle shirt. So, like, Rhodes, like, pulls the shirt over him and starts, like, giving him, like, body blows and stuff. I was a little weirded out that Guevara was just standing there in the ring rather than helping out. Like, you figure them being the heels, Guevara would have come out immediately and started attacking Rhodes to get the advantage. But it was Rhodes and Paige for a good chunk at the beginning of the match. Then eventually they start wearing down Adam Page. The hot tag comes in after one of the sickest discus lariats I've ever seen. Guevara gets hit so hard from Paige. He's just lying there in the ring with like his hands up, like he's pointing, almost like he's saying, did anybody get the number of that truck? That looked fantastic. A couple times during the match, Jake Hayward would get involved. He did heavy clothesline Dustin Rhodes outside the ring at one point. No, sorry, it was Adam Page. That took Page out for the rest of the match. Not long after, Rhodes is trying to put Jericho in the Shattered Dreams, and then Hager comes in when Guevara has the ref distracted. He does a bit of a clothesline. As soon as Rhodes gets up, Jericho hits the Judas effect, and they get the victory. Post-match, they immediately start beating down Rhodes again. Page tries to take on Hager to get him out of there. He does manage to at least get enough of Hager they start brawling to the back, so they're gone. So it's Guevara and Jericho along with Dustin Rhodes. The lights suddenly go out, and it's the second time that happened. I actually forgot to mention the lights went out during a very brief interview with the Best Friends talking about the tag tournament. And I thought, oh, is the Dark Order making an appearance here? No, it's just them setting up Shawn Spears. The lights go out again, and my brain was sitting there thinking, I'm like, I don't think Marty Scurll is ready to come yet. I don't think his contract's done. So that's a bit early. It's also kind of pointless. Like, you want to debut him in full gear. Because why else would the lights go out? The lights go back on, and Cody's in the middle of the ring. That was a bit of a strange thing. I don't know why they need to turn the lights out. The Cody just could have, come through the crowd or come down the ramp and even out the odds. That was a bit of a strange way to get him in. But he does take out Guevara, but Santana Ortiz now come in, so we're getting back to the same thing from last week. The difference being that MJF now this time gets to come out and play a spoiler. Now they tease it for a bit because he grabs a chair and he stares at the guys. And then Jericho holds him up, so it looks like they're ready to have MJF turn, but MJF does attack the Inner Circle and keeps that going. Jericho eventually takes him out, but then the Young Bucks come out, super kick party for a little bit, and then as Jericho tries to escape, so the good guys definitely got the better of the Inner Circle this time, and Jericho is trying to escape, but then Darby Allin comes down the ramp on a skateboard and attacks Jericho, and that would end the show as Jericho walks away with the rest of his guys in tow, just saying, I'll see you, Cody, at Full Gear, and Darby next week, I'll see you too, and it's your funeral, bitch. So that was the end of the show. And like I said, this was a fantastic episode of All Elite Dynamite. That was fantastic. Loved every second of it. I may not have appreciated the women's tag match as much, but they definitely showed us that if this is going to be a normal show, because there were no titles on the line in this match, or in this show. There was the tournament match, but again, like, it was just another regular match at that point. If this is the kind of stuff we're going to get most nights, good Lord, we're going to be spoiled on the show every week if they can pull this off. Now, we've yet to see a few people. I mean, there was that, what was it, Wardlow? The weird, like, muscle guy that they showed off at, I think it was All Out. But, I mean, we're going to be seeing a few guys coming out here and there as we go along, but they definitely have their core roster right now that they're going to be showing us. But as a whole, we are looking at a very, very good product going forward. If this is episode 2 and they're still pulling this, like, this episode was far better than episode 1 to me. Episode 1, if I would rate it now, I would give that a B, probably like a B+ show at best. This show is a solid A. Absolutely solid A. The only thing taking it from an A+ was the women's match just being okay. But everything else on the show was fantastic. The opening match is one of the best matches I've seen in a while. It's the best tag team match I have seen since the Revival up against DIY at NXT Toronto. That's how far back I gotta go. I know everybody likes to talk about the ladder match at All Out with Lucha Bros and Young Bucks, but that's a different thing there. That is taking gimmicks out, just a straight wrestling match. You have to go all the way to NXT Toronto for that. So props to both Private Party and the Young Bucks for a fantastic match. So leading into next week, we will have, like I said, 2 title matches: Rijo against Britt Baker and Darby Allin against Darby Allin against Chris Jericho. I assume that both will retain, and then we will start setting up again full gear as we go. I would assume Darby Allin's going to get some good offense, and he might even hit a weaker coffin drop. Who knows? He might get a very close near fall, but eventually the Inner Circle will interfere enough to kind of end that. But yeah, fantastic showing from AEW. Very happy to find out that they went up 40K in Canada, so they went from 100-ish thousand to 155, I want to say the numbers were. Obviously, the ratings dropped in the US, but again, I think the baseball game had a lot to do with it, not to mention that, there were a lot of people that were tuning in for the first time, and they probably just looked at, oh, it's wrestling, I can't be bothered. But who knows? There's a lot of stuff going on. There's so much when it comes to sports that it's very easy for wrestling to get taken away, but both they and NXT had drops this week. So, it is what it is. And by the time we get to, I don't know, the end of the year, I'm not really going to care about ratings. I want to see what they do for the first 3 months, though, to see what they're holding up. After that, I'm concerned about the product, because I just want to make sure that this product is surviving and is going to be consistent with the ratings, because that tells me then that they're going to keep on the path that they're on, which has been fantastic thus far. So that's going to do it for this show, guys. So if you're looking for more stuff, you can follow me on Twitter at csradical. Instagram is cs-radical. We also have several other podcasts. If you're listening to this on YouTube, or watching this on YouTube, I guess for that matter, there is the audio version of it. You can check it out at anchor.fm/radicalrants. That has, I think right now we're still at Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Radio Public. I think we're still waiting on a bunch of others for that. There are going to be other podcasts on that for now. It's just the hot tag. We will be seeing a Church of Weeb, which is my anime podcast, in a couple more weeks once we get to the third week of episodes from this upcoming season. The Radical Rant podcast is going to be possibly going somewhere, depending on if there's any news in the gaming industry that I feel like talking about, but at this point in time, there just isn't anything. So those 2 podcasts are what I'm focused on for the time being, that being the Hot Tag, this one, and the Church of Weeb. There is also my podcast that I do with my buddies called the VCR Podcast. You can check that out on this YouTube channel if you're coming from here, or if you are looking for the audio version of the podcast, it is at anchor.fm/VCR podcast. So once more, guys, thank you so much for watching or listening to this podcast, and we will see you next week when hopefully we will have just as good a show from AEW. So see you next time.